Hey guys, it's Matt. This video is going to be all over the place, but each topic is extremely important because I think the overall fear level in our community is still higher than it should be. There's reason for it, of course, but it's still, if you back up far enough and look down at it, it's higher than it should be. There, for us, for real people, real spiritual beings. There is no bad news if you back up far enough. Okay, there is no bad news. There's only bad news related to this ridiculous train stop reality. It was one millionth of a second probably when we walk out of the closet someday. It's bad from here, but this is not all there is. A constant reminder of that is always a good thing. And I'm not just saying that to make myself feel better. And I haven't even had any well, Matt, have you had out of body experiences? Do you astral travel? Do you do ayahuasca? No, I haven't done any of that. I haven't done any of that. But I observe. And as the data comes in year after year after year, the evidence on one side that this is, if you back up far enough, a ridiculous little learning experience reality is overwhelming. But we'll get into that later. It is good to reiterate that because of all the fear that's coming. Um, Let me just say this, guys, before getting into some of the topics. I do need to do a part two of the video I presented on Saturday about people being forced by their job to make a certain decision or do a certain thing, or their job's at risk. Definitely need a part two. People generally said to me that I did a pretty good job in that presentation, pretty fair. I wasn't trying to tell anybody what to do. Of course, you won't hear one sentence in that video saying, this is what you should do if you're in this situation. Absolutely not. I would never do that. I was just trying to float ideas because people are in different situations. People, again, unlike my situation, which is incredibly flexible, me who have four cats to look after, and I have to go help Pam a few hours a week with some house chores. That's all I have. My situation is not your situation. So it's just trying to float ideas. So, bring up things that you might not have considered in a certain way. But some people did email me and say, Matt, you forgot a few key things. You completely forgot a few key things. Or, you didn't do this right or that right. So definitely need to do a part two based on looking at your comments, all the emails, and all the information. At this point, guys, this channel, I'm a disseminator of information 50-50. It's 50% me, 50% you. When the Texas Shrug channel started, it was 98% me. But over time, the amount of smart people that email me, the amount of good comments, I become a disseminator of information. I put information back out to you in a way, that people can kind of grasp. But 50% of what I present now is I'm influenced by the people that comment and people that email me, etc. So, with that being said, the part two of what was presented on Saturday about being forced, because people are like being forced like this week. I mean, it's coming now for a lot of people in their jobs. That needs to be presented sooner rather than later. But when I'm not making a video, I'm not off at the water slide. I'm not. What's that? There's a amusement park in Lancaster County, in Lancaster, called Dutch Wonderland. Have you ever heard of Dutch Wonderland? I've I've been there once, I think, as a kid. I'm not up at Dutch Wonderland when I'm not making a video. I'm generally looking at comments, emails. I'm being influenced, and then I try to take the best parts as I can determine that comments and present them back out to you. Like Michael the other day sent me that incredible insight about the Constitution. I said this needs to be a whole video about how we have a whole. We're born with certain natural rights. People need to see that, but they create a situation where people don't see that by saying they created something even better. This shining thing that is the ultimate pinnacle of human freedom in existence since Darwin said we emerged from the monkeys in the bog. This thing was created called the Constitution. It's positioned as the greatest thing that ever was and ever will be for human freedom. But Michael's like, well, no, it created a situation where you now have to argue in a court for your freedom. So it's like, yeah, that has to be a video. 50% is from of what comes in from you guys. But one more thing about that, guys, the emails, it's very hard for me to keep up. I beg you, please, if you have, like Michael's email about the insight on the Constitution was like one or two paragraphs. I just can't. I can't. I don't have time to go through. And if there's some giant email, I literally sometimes I put it off to the side and I'm like I can't do that now. And sometimes I just don't get to it. I can't. So little doses is best for me. There's somebody named TJ now that he's given me so much great information over the years. But I've gone to him, I've said, TJ, I can't absorb now. So now he understands like little doses to Matt, little things to think about is the best way to do it. And if I need more information, I'll write back and say, expand upon that. But anyway, so guys, the fear level is higher than it should be at this point. Let's just start addressing regarding the fear level, before we get into the really important points to consider without, on the general level before going into the detail. I don't watch a lot of these YouTube channels anymore. The fear ones I turned off a long time ago, but are they still talking about the meat packing, the meat packing plants closing? Remember that? Oh, I hope you turn those channels off. It was the fear came in March, April, and May of 2020 about the meat packing plants, and you won't be able to get. eh, Well, yeah, that doesn't mean that some of those stories weren't real, but that's if you are a gigantic evil cabal that is in some way seeing to what's going on now, of course you're going to have fear stories. You probably will close a meat packing plant and hope that a million people start talking about it. So fear propagates certain communities. So that negative, slimy resonance and energy then flow back out into the ether so they can vampirically suck from it. So the idea is maybe there was a meat packing plant that closed, but as a truther making videos on a certain channel, are you going to push that, or are you going to step back and say, yeah, it's part of the plan? The whole thing is from the beginning. Um, well, I'm not going to say what I said versus someone else, but this thing has been orchestrated from every aspect of it has been orchestrated. So if you're going to make a video about meatpacking plants closing, do you realize they want you making a video about that? So it puts thousands of people into fear, and then they run out and hoard and all that. So it doesn't mean if somebody made a video about that the damn plant didn't close. It just will, yeah, well, that's a temporary thing, and they're gonna present shortages of toilet paper. They're gonna do these things. They're gonna play these games. Ultimately, um, ultimately, the fear level. There's a lot of reasons why it should be kept in check and way, way lower than it is with most people. So I think it starts here with Bootsy crying at me for food. I'll have to pause in a second, and of course, see to her every need. Um, it starts with this. Bootsy, please. You can't hear it, guys, but it's extremely annoying. It starts with this. At this point, we should just be ready for anything. Matt, is another shoe going to drop on this thing? Yeah, probably. So what? If you're ready for anything, then nothing will phase you, and nothing will phase you. That goes along with the notion of backing up far enough and looking down and seeing what this reality truly is. And I mean, nothing should phase us for most of the old guard for what we've been through. And I'm going to present a ridiculous example, but I couldn't be more. This is the most important part of this video. Do you remember? Now, this is a really spooky image when it's presented. It's funny. It's not fearful. But remember the end of Legend, the Tom Cruise movie Legend, which is really interesting and well done. But you have like sword and sorcery and fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons stuff. One of the first Tom Cruise movies, Legend, about the fairies and the demons and The devil character at the end of Legend, most of you have seen it. If you haven't seen it, just watch the last 20 minutes of Legend. The devil creature, it was a demon. It wasn't the devil at the end of Legend because he says, Father. Well, who's he? He's calling out for Father. That thing was a lesser demon. But it's one of the all-time scariest, spooky creatures ever presented in movie history. And it's incredible for the year that was done, too. No CGI whatsoever. Anyway, if you look up at the moon one day, and that literally a gigantic head of that thing peers around the side, then you should say, we expected something like this. Seriously, expect anything could happen. But if that thing literally peers around the moon one day and calls you by name, like, they're capable of this, or the reality itself, I kind of expected something like this. Am I going to be fearful? It's terrifying, but no, I'm not going to be fearful of it. It can only affect me in this reality, and the reality has become an absolute joke from top to bottom. Matt, if the devil creature from Legend peered around the moon and called you by name, you wouldn't be scared? Yeah, I'd be scared. I'd be scared. But you know what I mean. So if something happens in a big city, or you, okay, this is the okay, this is to be this we all expected another shoe to drop. Okay, every bit of it is orchestrated, and every bit of it um, is part of some who knows how long the plan goes back. Do not give it the energy and fear that it wants. It's that simple. Think of do the it's like what I presented there is like the boggart situation in Harry Potter. It's a very interesting truth drop scene. I forget which one it is. Goblet of Fire, one of those. I don't know which one, but I'll just do 1 minute and we'll move on to more important topics. Um, they line defense against the dark arts. They line up the class of Ron, and I guess it was an old one because they're pretty young. Ron Weasley, Harry Potter, Hermione, whatever. And the guy says, whatever comes out that door, or they have this closet or wardrobe, it will know your worst fear. Okay, the Boggart situation in Harry Potter is the same as the Event Horizon situation, which the Event Horizon movie with Lawrence Fishburne that I relate to the reality itself. So when it opens up, that boggart, it will know your worst fear and it will present you your worst fear. It'll just morph into it. And your goal is to realize what it's doing, and they tell them to cast the spell. Basically, the spell is called Ridiculous. They just say it in a little bit different way. And they say, think of whatever comes out that door as something absurd. And that's the nature of how they tell Ron Weasley or whoever to cast a spell. I think with his was a spider. He's afraid of spiders, and he thinks of it in roller skates, and it's just flopping all over, and the class laughs. And that's one of the biggest truth drops of all time, because that if collectively we all would do that collectively, I have to present that comic that I got in the mail, the Dream of a Thousand Cats. I'll talk a bit about it if I remember. If collectively we did that and we had enough people doing it, it would affect, in my opinion, it would affect reality itself. But you have the masses, of course, hanging on every word coming from the news anchor, believing every bit of it. But then in the truth community, they're not stupid. Of course, they're like, well, we know this group over here sees through a lot of this, but what do we do with them? Oh, we'll just put them. They're incredible generator beings. We'll put them in a state of fear, and we'll vampirically suck from that. That's what it does. If we could do a boggart ridiculous whatever on it collectively, it would be very interesting to say the least. So hopefully you've turned off the fear channels. And that doesn't mean Matt. Does that mean there's not going to be another major? There could be a major shoe to drop, and they don't. They have this group, whatever it is. Let's look. Have they ever been involved with death before? Yeah, a few times. World War One, reasons for that cooked up. World War Two, they just basically created the entire Hitler. They created the entire Hitler war machine, and they started creating it 10 years or so before World War Two. They created the situation in Vietnam. They create situations that bring death. That's what's nothing new. It doesn't mean if the shoe drops, it's not going to be bad for some people. But even if it, again, if you back up far enough, even if it's, oh, Matt, didn't you? It's going to affect Philadelphia. You're close to Philadelphia. Who cares? I'm like that guy in Stephen Falcon. I've said this before. Stephen Falcon in War Games. His name's Lightman. His name was Lightman. Matthew Broderick. Imagine if they had the Lightman character playing the Colonel in Glory. Not Matthew Broderick as Lightman, but that's whatever. Sorry. Um, People get on me too because I watch too many movies, and I get a lecture every video about you have nerve. You just watch movies. Oh, I'm sorry. After studying dark reality all day, I don't deserve any sort of release. I should just spend my evenings reading the endless tomes of Madame Blavatsky. If I didn't have a release, which I do find in movies, I absolutely do, I would have cracked by now. Okay, I would have one. I'm not 3 weeks on, 1 week off to Tahiti. I haven't gone anywhere for for 10 years for the most part. I don't want to. We're in the middle of the smack in the middle of this thing, and they've taken huge bites of the shit sandwich, which opens up the back end for us of a complete understanding of everything for the most part. It has to give back on the back end. There's no doubt about that. I mean, just things come to all of us a lot more quickly because we have the veils are just dropping and dropping and dropping. Do we have our third eye open or whatever? No, not yet. Do little bits of it poke through? Yeah, little bits of. I don't think it's all or none. Is it open? No. Do we have a lot more to do? Levette talks about an event potentially coming where everybody potentially could have access to their third eye. By the way, just a quick note about Levette. If we haven't seen Levette on YouTube. She is mostly posting to, I think it's called Brighteon, and I will give, at the end of this video, I'll give specifics on her Brighteon channel. It's pretty spooky stuff, in terms of her looking at the astrology, Levette talking about, they've already laid down two parts of the massive, which she calls the Cairo ritual. The X marks the spot on the United States, the basically artificially created 7-year tribulation between eclipses, what they're trying to pull off. They potentially have two more rituals to basically seal the spell. I mean, it's spooky, scary stuff. You have to keep the fear in check if you watch that. In terms of her studying how they do business, there is merit for what she's talking about. But no matter how spooky, you have to keep the fear in check. She talks about Chicago a lot. And whether she's right or wrong in any prediction, again, I will give specifics on Levette's Brighteon at the end of this video. And her car doesn't start, or it doesn't work. If anybody wants to contribute, she could probably use some right about now based on some things she said in that video. So I'll give it at the end. But she's talked about Chicago. If I lived in Chicago, based on watching Levette's video and how brilliant some of that presentation is, still, whatever. How first of all, she could be wrong in any prediction. But even if I believe she's 100% right, would I move out of Chicago? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. Somebody said, "Oh, Matt, Philadelphia is a target of this or that," or who cares? Who cares if you have the right perspective on who you really are? Um, a train stop reality that's one millionth of a second, which will be when we're just part of something, things we can't understand, but part of something that is always has been, always will be. That doesn't. I don't think anybody has to pick one religion over another to have those philosophies. I don't assign myself to any religion, as you know. I just consider myself a spiritual being, and I'm recognizing what I really am. The entire reality is out to hide you from who you really are. The entire reality itself is out to hide a human being or right. We don't. That word is a system word. It's a derogatory term. It's a term of limitation. We absolutely should not use that word anymore. But you know what I mean. It's out to hide your true nature. The entire reality itself is designed. Whether it was originally designed to do it, it doesn't matter. Whether it was hijacked. It now what exists out our window now is designed to do that. And the minions at the Melvin P level and the Jeff Bezos level, and these clowns of like news presenters like the plastic greasy hair man on ABC and the skeleton man who no longer is the anchor of CBS News, but he probably still on 60 Minutes. Like I haven't watched that or any news program in a long, long time. These minions, every single time I come back and address this, it moves down the sliding scale. My belief is more towards they absolutely do not understand the big picture at all of what they're doing. And I believe that about even the highest level minions, that at least the ones you know, or that are going to have a Wikipedia page, or that appear on TV. Um, every single time I've gone back to address it, or think about it, or collect new information on it. Let's just look at Melvin P. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. A certain person that was somewhat involved in something called Microsoft Windows, and that fairy tale story about they're all fairy tale stories about how let's just for have fun let's talk about this fairy tale. All the Silicon Valley stories are fairy tale, ridiculous. They all come out of the garage. They have the same elements to the story. Well, what are you saying? That it's not real? Well, it's real, but it was designed to be that way. It's real, but it's following a script that was laid down by their greater masters. It wasn't like just a guy on his own, Bill, as an entrepreneur. No, there's just as the information comes in, it's following some massive script. But the Microsoft one is really the IBM one is the funniest, and it relates to Microsoft how they had to rush their personal computer to market because there was this company called Apple they were so terrified of. Now, IBM, I'll be 2 minutes, guys, to get back to the more important issues. Let's just have fun with this. This is too funny. Um, so IBM being basically the world supplier of computers, going back to supplying the Hitler war machine and just, they were everything and all there was for computers for 20, 30 years, probably going back to ENIAC and all that. So they're going to be this company that already had a global dominant position, whatever computers were, is going to be terrified of two guys that just got out of a garage, Steve and Steve. So they can't be beaten by the Apple II. They have to rush their personal computer to market, and they have to then give away all the intellectual property. They have to farm out the operating system. And this little company with Melvin P called Microsoft, they step up and say, "We can do it for you. Oh, just take it then. We'll just give away the $100 billion operating system that eventually, equates into $100 billion." And then we're like, "Well, we can't get the chip architecture done either. We need to farm all the intellectual property and everything we have and everything we've ever researched. We need to farm that out to Intel." And then we need to create two companies that will eventually be much larger than the company that gave away all the information. Where if anything were real, if they would have just taken an extra 4 or 5 months, they could have all done it in house, you know? And even if you need Intel to build chips, do you have to give away the intellectual information? I mean, give me a break. Give me a break. Like IBM couldn't have come up with a DOS prompt. Like that's so sophisticated. A DOS, guys, I'll shut up and I'll move on. But then Microsoft goes out and hoodwinks another company. Microsoft didn't even do it. They went to this guy who has the DOS system, the DOS prompt, and they say, and Bill says, "I'll give you 50 grand." He goes, "Oh, okay, 50 grand." He hands it over to Bill. Come on, what a joke. Anyway, we do a whole video sometime. Each one of these stories is like that to a degree. And a couple of them are probably real, but there's elements of at some point the men in black come over, take over, and then the story fairy tale story continues, and then two fairy tale stories diverge in a woods. One is really what happened, and one is what's presented on Wikipedia. Sorry. So, guys, just let me just wrap up this segment and feed Bootsy. I'll come back. No matter what happens, and I mean, what could be creepier than the devil creature from Legend peering around the moon? No matter what happens, you just be like, by my heel. I care not. I'm not going to be phased by this. I don't care what it is. Yeah, we expected something big, and here it is. Okay, fine. It's just the whole the trains just the train stop reality life. I was watching Gladiator as a release, mental, you know, put my mind into mush for a few hours with a few beers to unwind. And, as we have a new perspective, we notice a lot of things in a lot of these movies, like truth drops and things I didn't notice or I didn't see in the same way when I watched Gladiator. And there's no huge truth drops in Gladiator. They just stole the entire story from Spartacus. They even call him the Spaniard, which is right from Spartacus. I think they were going to give Gene Simmons to Kirk Douglas. Now, give him to the Spaniard. And they just call out the name Spaniard, and they took that for Russell Crowe and Gladiator, whatever. So he's uh, Proximo or whatever says, remember, Russell Crowe or whatever, Maximus. Remember, all we are shadows and dust. Does he say shadows and dust? Yeah, it relates to the shadows and dust. He's telling him, I don't know what he said, like remember what you are before you, or don't be too fearful before you go out into the Colosseum. I forget how it was presented, but he's like, just remember your shadows and dust. Yeah, that doesn't mean ultimately that's not the atheist position. It's just the opposite. In this experience, shadows meaning dream, a maya of some kind. What you are, what we are, we come here with the mind wiped, so we don't understand. If we understand what we really were, none of this would. There would be no consequence. There would be no. There would be no excitement here. There would be no emotion. It would be like, oh, it would be no different than like approaching some bullshit Donkey Kong video game, like the literal one that came out in '85, and just saying, well, I want you to have the experience of Donkey Kong. I want you, person playing it, you need to be there with Mario as the damn barrels roll down and the ape jumps around up there, and you can never put yourself in that position. You say, I'm just playing this bullshit game. The only way is that, well, then I'm going to need to put you in there as some sort of Sims character, and you're going to run around behind Mario. That's the only way to get the experience. That doesn't mean we're being played exactly. Maybe there is maybe a reason why the notion of fate and destiny and the fates, it is arguable that we have a lot less free will here than we believe. A lot of smart people believe part of the experience and part of the learning is you have to have 100% confidence, you have 100% free will, or you get into the idea here that you just don't get out of bed in the morning. So that has to be part of the experience. But I generally believe we have free will here. I believe the reality itself tries to put us on a script, and it's one of our main jobs in life is to notice when the cue cards are being put in our hands and break the script whenever we can. Um, but is there any? Yeah, there's one more part, and Bootsy's still crying. One more part about that's related to this that I've talked about in the past. But if you haven't seen, it's such a good. Even if you don't like Star Trek: The Next Generation, that's the one with Picard and Worf. I forget what episode is. You would just look up Star Trek Next Generation episode where um, Picard lives an entire lifetime in 15 minutes. A probe comes. This is basically the exact situation we're in now, in my opinion. The probe comes, and the Star Trek Enterprise goes to investigate, and the probe opens a door, and this flashing light goes into Picard on the bridge, and he falls down. And it's an hour-long show, and like 55 minutes of the hour, or whatever, less commercials, whatever. It's him on this other planet, or with Oh, what did I say? He has a family, a wife, a kid. No technology. They're farmers. There's a drought, and it all comes together at the end. I am going to give it away. It's 20 some years old. There's no possibility of spoilers when something's 20 years old. I have to say what happened to make the point here. Um, of course, he then wakes up on the Enterprise, and he's like, well, how long was I out? And they're like 15 minutes. Well, the 50 minutes or whatever the episode is him in this other life. He literally lived an entire lifetime in this other place that was 100% real to him. And the idea is the probe put this experience into his mind because the probe represented a race that had died out like a million years ago, was just trying to have people remember who they were, for posterity. So it was completely real to him. And literally, when he woke up after 15 minutes, he realized it was it was just the way we wake up in the morning from a dream. But we understand, oh, that was a dream environment, which we consider to be very vague and very fleeting and nebulous compared to the solidness of this reality. But to Picard, it was 100% real. He, at that point, lived two lifetimes, with one having no more merit than the other than knowing that that lifetime was kind of implanted into him. So that's my best take on this reality, and whether it happens at death or at some point, no matter what we are a part of, I think we'll have the perspective of, yeah, a whole lifetime in 15 minutes, or time will have no meaning, walking in and out of the closet for one millionth of a second, and saying, is it'll be like waking up from a dream. Like, you wake up from a dream in the morning. Most times, for me at least, I forget the dream in 1 second. If I don't immediately try to remember what I was dreaming about when I wake up in the morning, I forget immediately, unless there's a trigger event during the day. Like, I see somebody serve coffee, like, oh, there was coffee in my dream, like a trigger event. I'll forget immediately. But if I don't forget, you immediately go, well, okay, well, you immediately put the dream into perspective. Oh, that reality was a dream, and we know exactly. Well, I think this life will be no different, no different. Oh, that's what that was. Oh, I see. Okay, but then you'll kick yourself. You'll kick yourself. Think, oh my, why did I put so much worry, energy, attention, worry? It followed the news, followed politics, was worried about my water bill was late, and I was so worried about it. I drove like halfway across the state to give him my check. I was so worried. I didn't want it go on my credit. And then I was stressed about this, and I had anxiety about this, you'll kick yourself. Go. I'm not saying just say, you're right, Matt. F it. I'm not gonna pay another bill. I'm gonna just open my door to. It's just gonna be a constant party here. Anybody that wants to come in my door, and I'm never gonna pay another bill. I'm never gonna go to work again. I'm not saying that. We don't know what, even if what I'm saying is true, it's still, well, we have responsibilities here, and I'll continue to perform my responsibilities. It doesn't mean I'm not going to get out of bed in the morning if I have this perspective. But yeah, your inner knowing probably says the same as mine. That this you'll say is, oh, that's all it was, and I was so worried about it. You got to have that perspective, and not falsely created to make yourself feel better, so you don't put fear out into the ether when you watch the news. Because if you dig deep inside enough, it'll tell you that's what this is. It's a, you know, I don't like to say it's a joke. Sometimes I do sometimes like to say it's a joke. But I don't. One part of that I don't like is the natural element here. A hawk flew over the other day, and it just the beauty of the game board here, um, is, I don't like to say joke, and then that is not a joke. How the seasons change is incredible to me. How it affects me on so many different levels. That is an incredible experience. So it is not a joke. The what you could just, for lack of a better word, call the hijackers, the outer screen, trying to reach in and grab everybody by the balls. That is a joke, absolute joke. I mean, what did Wendy sent me something. I'm not going to make a video about this, but I'll talk about it. People send me a lot of fun, interesting stuff. The headline was something like Jeff Bezos suing NASA over the moon. It's just something about that. I don't know, like SpaceX is being promised the moon for their flights, and Bezos, he wants his Blue Origin should have the same right to go to the moon. And what? He sent a hot water heater up to like 40,000 feet. Nobody was even in it. He can't. Nobody, look. You know my take. Nobody can go to whatever the moon isn't even what they say it is. No, certainly nobody can go there if it isn't what they say it is. But is it just? It's so comical. Just constant stall tactics to get people distracted. And Bootsy's still there, still crying. I've got to go, but we'll come back. One of the things I'll talk about when I come back, make it seem like some kind of commercial break or something on TV, but to me, it's coming back. Okay, I am back. Bootsy is satisfied and satiated, hopefully, with her Friskies. She seems to have the same never-ending appetite for Friskies shreds in the gravy that these George Bush creatures and these creeps have for trying to get and vampirically suck your energy. You know, although Bootsy can be satisfied, then she'll eventually go to sleep. The George Bush creatures, it's like they can never be satisfied. What is that from Romeo and Juliet or Leonardo? Good Mercutio, be satisfied. Be satisfied. Mercutio? No, Tybalt. Tybalt, a name that I render as loving as my own. Be satisfied. These George Bush creatures and the creeps here and the minions, they're never satisfied. It's like a mosquito that never leaves your arm. It's like, go bother somebody else. Can't you go somewhere interdimensionally? Just leave us alone for a decade? I mean, these creeps just keep coming and coming. Oh boy. Anyway, guys, this is the more important part of the video. If you're looking for a 1.25 exercise, and Matt, get to it. That's not what the channel's about anymore. It's about putting your feet up and getting in touch with your inner knowing and letting your inner knowing guide you based on maybe some things that I might say that resonate with you. It ain't a 1.25 exercise while you're Jupiter ascending, trying to clean the toilets. And, Jupiter ascending, she cleaned the toilets, but she actually was the queen of an intergalactic empire. There's some truth drops in that. That's not the truth drop, but there are some truth drops in Jupiter ascending, as bad as that movie is. Um, so, guys, the more important part relates to two chapters of the book that are removed from YouTube now. I don't know why I had to remove them, but I think it had to do with the copyrighted images or something like that. But this part is my first attempt to redoing those two chapters. Okay. The first one was, if you remember me presenting the book, the, if I remember correctly here, it was my own book. The last conversation you had before coming into this reality, the last conversation you had with your spiritual guide before incarnating here on Earth. And the other one on the back end, I did a chapter called The First Conversation You Had, or Somebody Would Have After a Failed Life with Their Spiritual Guide. And a couple quick things before I present. What I'm about to talk about now will go into redoing those two chapters. So people have said, why don't you repost them? The reason I don't repost them is because they need to be reworked about. I still would back about 80% of them, but 20% of them need to be reworked based on the information we've gathered ourselves, based on all the great information I've gotten from people emailing me and people that have had NDEs and after-death experiences, people that remember their lives before incarnating. I mean, people that have talked to their higher self. I need to redo the chapters. But again, guys, I presented them as fiction, just as to see if anything would resonate as they were presented. So again, one was a mock fictitious situation. The I always get confused. It's my own book. the last conversation you had before incarnating and it was like a fictitious thing with a spiritual guide. It's like if you want to go down there into that thing called Earth, it was like the movie Soul kind of before the movie Soul came out. If you want to go in there, that's a hardcore place. You better know what you're getting into, that sort of thing. But it was all fiction. I have no, again, I don't have any. I'm truly Tommy, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid. I study reality from a Sherlock Holmes perspective. I don't do ayahuasca or have memories of past Dolores Cannon sessions on past life regression. So there's a complete element of fiction in those two chapters. Of course, I don't have those experiences, but the idea or the basis of it, most people have said was sound. I didn't represent them or put them back on YouTube yet because they need to be reworked. Okay, in terms of them having to being reworked, this is a very important first step in me reworking them. This concept here, I think initially was part of those two chapters, but it needs to be a bigger part of those two chapters. The basic yin and yang conflict of what's going on in this reality right now. So I'm all over the place. I'm sorry. These are very, very difficult things to talk about. So let's just jump right into it. Let's just jump right into it after what 40 some minutes. Um, the idea that this lifetime and this reality is a very dangerous place because it's at this point, whether it's been hijacked or initially designed to do this, what exists now, it is designed to get you to agree to remove all your power. Right? So there's no doubt that is going on now. How this whole reality is structured through its minions, no matter what dark force hijacked what, basically what exists now is a training ground, Denzel's training day, a training ground, so you just give away all your power. That's what the world is, for the most part, as it exists in 2021. A training ground, so you just are taught, like Pavlov's dog, to just happily. Thank you, sir. Can I have another? Here. Would you like more power? Would you like more of my energy? Oh, I just asked for it. Here. That's what it is, right? That's what it is. Now that's one side of the yin and yang. The other side relates more to like that potentially that last conversation you had with a spiritual guide or with your higher self before incarnating. Again, I'm not saying any of this really happens. It's all fiction, but the idea behind it, I think most people would resonate that it's sound. That it's like, okay, if you want to go in here, with like the juries, the juries in Soul, with to a degree, like that. We'll talk about Soul some other time. I put a video about Soul, but I removed it because I missed a lot of big things and it needs to be represented. Um, a conversation with your spiritual guide, something like that. This reality that was created by such and such for such and such, and the creeps didn't create the reality here. For anybody new, the George Bush creatures and the creeps, they play a role. This place needs assholes. They play a role and they play it perfectly. Now they don't like, oh, we have to act like assholes today. They don't know they're playing a role. They're more fooled, in my opinion, than our group is. More fooled. They have no idea, in my opinion, these minion assholes, how they're being used, played, and manipulated. They didn't design. They might have slightly hijacked realities, some buttons and levers, and some information, some magic and stuff. But that's not. Think about the greater being that designed the reality. I mean, it's way above these George Bush creatures, of course. They're in here playing the role of asshole. Um, Django, you'll be playing when we go to Big Daddy's Ranch, you'll be playing a character, and you must never break a character. Did somebody say that to Barack Obama or George Bush? No, but that's what they're designed to do. So if in the conversation with the spiritual guide and again, I'm not saying there was we sat down with some spiritual guide. I don't know. But at some point, Tony reiterates to me, not my friend Tony that believes everything on the news, but the other Tony. I think in one email he said, if there's one thing to remember from the emails I've sent you, and he's been on me recently. He's like, Matt, you ain't getting it. He's like, you're not getting what I'm saying, and I apologize to Tony. He's tried very hard with me, and maybe I'm not getting as quickly as I should, but I'll get it. I'll get it eventually. And we'll talk about that. But he said, if you need to remember just one thing, remember you agreed to come here. So if you carry that perspective around as you live your life, you take things differently. If you put it into perspective, that 15-minute Picard experience, an entire lifetime, you agreed to come here. So in the last conversation, I'm getting confused again. The last conversation you had before incarnating, it's like the spiritual guide. If you could have a conversation with higher self, would be like this. You got to be careful if you go into this place. It's designed so you freely give all your power away. And then, of course, you'd be like knowing what you are and knowing you can see all knowing being or whatever aspect of spirit you were before going in, before they made you Tommy or be agreeing to become Tommy, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid. Of course, you'd be like, that's impossible. I could never give my power away. I mean, just like if somebody were to come up to me now sitting here and say, you're sitting here now and you feel good and you feel strong and healthy. You are you are going to walk within 5 minutes without it. You're going to walk into that crack house. You're going to be that crack house right over there. You're going to be addicted to all its meth and all its crack and all its ice and all its heroin. You're going to become an addict, and then you're going to flush your own life down the drain. Somebody knocking on my door telling me that. I'm saying, I'm not going to do that. I'm not capable of that. Well, that's maybe we got that warning and didn't believe it. It's like, no, that if you go into that place, you could you they it's very dangerous. You can end up giving all your power away. And not that that's going to flush your soul down the abyss, down the Pope's abyss, but maybe that sets you back a few million years or whatever the consequence might be. Some people don't believe there's any consequence and you can't harm your spiritual self. We'll talk about that some other time. And again, I'm just a disseminator of information here. Not that I have any insight to that, other than my own inner knowing, just weighing what people have told me from different perspectives. So, but if you're going to put yourself in a dangerous situation like incarnating to Earth and being trained from birth to give all your power away, whatever that means to you, then there has to be an upside. The yin and yang is the most important, the absolute number one symbol of all time, from my perspective, in this entire reality system. Then, okay, if I'm going to take a big risk, there has to be the reward on the back end. If you can take it, it has to be there. The yin and yang, it moves, it has to fill in the other side. I absolutely believe this. Every thing inside me screams this out and has for years. This is why the veils drop. This is why we can see things immediately. We can watch a movie now and be like, oh, that's what is being communicated. Oh, that's I don't want to stray. I was going to say, I just saw a movie the other day and it was like, oh, that's what is being said, where I would have missed it just 3 or 4 years ago, completely missed it. So there has to be the reward. And the reward, um, again, this is just complete speculation, but a lot of smart people talk about you can get done here in this place what it might take, and I did mention this to a degree in the book chapter, the last conversation before incarnating. You can, it's like spiritually leveling up like on steroids times a million. You can, in terms of getting things done or spiritual progression, the best way to look at it, or at least what resonates with me as being the most important part of that, is letting, maybe not leveling up spiritually as much as this place is a place to let things go, like a dumping ground, where if you can truly let it go, like it's a horrible analogy, but like we can't throw anything out anymore. Like if you have you need to wait for your computer recycling day in the community to take your monitor in because it has a hazmat, and you can't get rid of oil and gas, and you put a TV out anymore at the end of your curb. Your trash man will not touch it. Most trash men will not. It'll sit out there. So it's like you can't throw anything out. But then I told you I was up at the Lancaster Chester County dump, And that's what it, if you can't throw it out there, where can you throw it? So obviously they take anything. They take TVs, they take grills, they take, it's the dump. If you can't get rid of it there, where can, but that's, it's like, but it's kind of like when I go into the dump, it's kind of nice. It's like I can get rid of everything here and I'm not going to be harassed, or I'm not going to be, I actually called my trash company and said, you're my trash company. You must have a way to get TVs. We don't touch them. But you're the trash company. If you don't do it, who does it? Can't help you, sir. So it's like, so I go in the dump and it's like being liberated or something. I'm not saying that right, but it's a nice feeling knowing I can get rid of all this stuff in one place. That's what this is. Probably. That's what this is. So it's like if you only knew what, if you only knew where you were and what you could get rid of here, whether you believe in karma or not, or it doesn't really matter. You can just slough it off here and exercise, quote, demons and just, you know what I mean? Like, do what you need to do here. If and you're going to kick yourself. And I don't even know exactly what that means in terms of like step 1, step 2, step 3, but you get a sense like if you could be teleported back into, another part of yourself or another part of consciousness that's not here or whatever that means to you. People probably parts of yourself rooting like, dude, you're not using the reality for what it's for. If you only knew what you could do there, if you only knew you could get rid of, you could take all your Jacob Marley chains, just dump them here. This is not, I'm seeing a nice, beautiful tree out my window. It's changing colors, and it's not the dump in that respect, but in a certain spiritual baggage sense, it is the dump. Maybe there's parts of you rooting for you, like you're not using the reality for what it's for. Just dump everything here. Walk out. The Francis Dunnery song. I don't. He has some incredible insights he puts in his songs. Francis Dunnery. The only thing you get to keep is what you give away. And all of these stories about these kings and queens, and they pack the coffins or the sarcophagus with riches and treasures and coins for the boatmen. And come on, you're trying to take all this stuff into the afterlife. It's just the opposite. The only thing you get to keep, to take with you, is what you've given away here. And what Levette would say, bank your karma, or doing certain deeds, or literally given away the baggage. The last conversation you had before incarnating, potentially I'll work this in when I redo the chapter. It's like that looks very attractive because what you have, you can just dump it all down there. You can just, and there ain't no hazmat fee. I can just dump it. You can dump it all down there. But the problem is when you get in there, you ain't gonna know that you can dump it all. You're not gonna remember any damn thing. In fact, the reality it'll be the opposite. It'll work overtime to pile more chains onto you. So you get in there, it's the perfect dumping ground if you could use it for what it's really made for. You won't understand what it's made for, and then it will convince you, and you'll just lap it up. You'll go along with it. It'll convince you to take on more burdens and chains while giving the most important parts of yourself away. And you'd be like, I would never do that. Oh, well, wait till you get down there and see what you do. I would never just simply walk out of the house here and go walk into the crack house and start doing a bunch of meth. That's never going to happen. And then like 10 minutes later, I'm in the crack house. How much you got? I'm like 10 minutes later, how did I get here? But you don't even realize it. You're like, well, this is a normal life. This experience, this life is the crack house. There's nothing else to it. The fish in the fish tank. That's all it is. You have to back up far enough and look down at it. But the last conversation before incarnating needs to be reworked, and I'll do that as soon as I can. But you understand this, the yin and yang. If it there's we can see the first part, we can see much more easily. That we can, any old guard here, or even if you're a new guard, um, even if you're right guard, um, the that's a deodorant in the United States for anybody listening overseas. We can see that the entire world here, whatever this is, it's some to some degree, it's been hijacked by a bunch of assholes that have just convinced everybody how to give their own power and energies away. And we will debate in the future. I don't want this to go too long. Some people would say, Matt, you're part of a higher self or a spiritual being that cannot exhaust itself. It would, even if you screw every aspect of this up, you really can't harm the essence of where you came from. The no consequences people. Where others would say, no, there's a reason why it's designed to take all your energies, and you can give soul tokens away, and karma is a real thing to other people here. And there's this debate rages on both sides. But everybody here sees that that's what the whole reality is designed to do. I mean, that's just obvious to us. But we probably fail to see a lot on the other side that if that exists, and it exists, look at the situation we're in. That the yin and not some of you won't agree with me, but to me the yin and yang, if the shit sandwich bite, here it comes. It's just bigger and bigger, and the situation we're in is unfathomable, and that the good has to follow it. The yin has to constantly swirl with the yang. And then fine, okay, then I get to leave more stuff here. If you're going to take this big bite of the shit sandwich, I can 1,000 times more quickly drop all my chains, drop all my attachment, dump everything I'm supposed to dump here in this incarnation. So it's like we almost should be like, you want to take a bigger bite? Good. Every bite you take, the yin and yang, I win. It's Obi-Wan Kenobi. For 40 years, it was Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm still going to call, for the rest of my life, going to call him Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't like Obi-Wan. I don't, whatever that. I saw that about 10 years ago. Obi-Wan? What's that? I thought it was Obi-Wan Kenobi. Play with Star Wars figures for hundreds of hours. Obi-Wan. It just doesn't resonate with me. Anyway, whatever. He says to Darth Vader, "Strike me down, Darth, and I've won. Strike me down, Darth. You want to go that far, dickhead? Then I become more powerful than you possibly can imagine. You've lost." It's the same thing here. They have to show you truth drops everywhere in these movies and everything. It's like, so you have two choices in what's going on out our window. Matt, you're just saying that to make yourself feel better. Whatever. You think so? No. The, the bigger, if more shoes drop and another meat packing plant closes and they just take more bites and more bites, you could then be like, "Oh no!" Or you can say, I've won. Then you've gone so far, you've broken so many rules. I believe this. I'm not saying it to make myself feel better. I've watched. This is how the reality must work, in my opinion. Ain't got no after death experience or Dolores Cannon past life rejections. It has to work this way. From a Sherlock Holmes perspective, it has to work this way. What's the alternative? You believe in the Big Bang, something blew up, and then we just came from monkey people? If that was the case, you'd have those monkey lines that just got halfway. You'd have small monkeys and lemurs riding horses out your window with, and you would have all sorts of if we all came from apes in terms of Darwin's theory of evolution, you'd have those that didn't get as far as we did. You'd have monkeys that maybe have their own farms and ranches and ride horses, but they wouldn't quite understand how to code in C++ computer language. We don't have that. We have us, and then we have all the monkeys still exist. Well, how come they didn't decide to advance? They just stayed completely still. But one little branch, it's absurd. So you can believe in all that, but once you see that everything here is a lie, you can analyze it from a Sherlock Holmes perspective and be like, okay, if this is what it's trying to do to me, then what does that tell me about everything I need to know about myself? So, and maybe it ultimately is up to us. As it gets worse and worse out your window, you can either keep feeding it the fear and then it'll use your energy to make itself even a bigger leviathan, or you can truly believe, and what you believe is what you get on the back end, that okay, I just, if it just goes any farther, I've won, or I'm gonna dump everything I need to dump in this lifetime, this reality. I'm gonna do everything that I need to do here, and then then I'm done with it. There's no more ties to it. And that's something I have no the people that talk about the ability to break free, Saturn Moon Matrix, recycling, reincarnation, the bardos of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and if you can, do you navigate your way out, or are you fooled by creating your own demons to come back into a body? All that, who knows? But it's almost overwhelming that it is up to us. It is up to us. There is no, the swing out sister. There's the stupid truth drops and all this stupid stuff. Break out, do, break out. What? That song sucks. Why would that, Matt, are you saying that Swing Out Sister is making some statement about breaking out of a samsara cycle? Yeah, probably. With Is she aware of it? No. That's just how the reality works. And maybe I'm wrong about Swing Out Sister, but what was the other then another song came up something about not putting stock in a twilight world. Yeah, whenever you think a certain thing is a truth drop, look at some of the other things they've done to see if there's a repeating theme. And the only other thing that ever came up from Swing Out Sisters, Twilight World. Yeah, yeah. Do the artists how this stuff comes out of art? I don't know. They don't know anything at the artist level. But anyway. So anyway, yeah, we have all the tools we need here to break the F out. What could be better news than that? If you go back to, don't you want to go back to before this event? And if you wouldn't you want to go back if you could, Matt, to before this and before the 7-Eleven, before you submitted the 7-Eleven job application, and life was so much more simple, and music was good, and movies were good, and wouldn't it be great if a new movie would come out like Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we were so excited to see that. It was so wonderful at the time, and it was as a kid to see a movie like that. You were so anybody under age 40 or probably the same age we always talk about. It's that key 35 number. You don't know what it's like to the anticipation of certain summer movies. It was incredible. Even things like even it seems like stupid now, but Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Poltergeist. My cousins tell me you got to see this movie Poltergeist, and then finally going in to see it. We had no on demand. We didn't have all this other media. It was because of what it was. Again, we didn't have a whole lot of other options. It was so big and so in 1977 taking your cousins for the first time to see Star Wars. It was incredible to look forward to stuff like that. But people like the whole point is, would you go back? No, absolutely not. I'm grateful to have those experiences. The reality is such that, those experiences, well, I don't want to say they'll never be duplicated in my lifetime, but it's unlikely based on the bites of the shit sandwich that they're taking. But I wouldn't go back because the purpose of this life was not to look forward to summer blockbuster movies. It's to do certain things for your eternal soul and spirit that will pay 100 trillion year dividends. So that's slightly more important. And that's that the news. It can't. It, the worse it gets, the more the positive side has to come in on the back end. Sorry to be so long-winded, guys, but how do you talk about this succinctly? I don't know. Thanks for watching and listening.